Welcome to the 2-Acre Homestead. Come along with us on our journey from a small, suburban homestead lifestyle
to our new lifestyle, homesteading in the rural countryside of southern Arizona.
We'll share with you our tips, tricks, successes, and failures.
From both our past suburban lifestyle to our new rural lifestyle,
all on the 2-Acre Homestead. Well, we're super excited to have Sarah Withers with us here in the studio. Thank you so much, Sarah, for being a willing participant to be interviewed here on the 2-Acre Homestead. Thank you so much for coming.
Here. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into dairy goats? What prompted that? Have you always kept dairy goats? Tell us a little bit about your background because we would love to hear it.
Sure thing. So I am Sarah. I'm married to my husband, Zach, and we have 3 little ones, and we live on a 2-acre homestead in the greater Phoenix area of Arizona. We have not always had dairy goats. We've not always done the homestead sort of life. I was raised in suburbia. So was my husband. Always loved animals, but definitely never really dreamed of taking this path in life. I'd say it all sort of stemmed back to before we moved here. We lived on a little tiny lot in the city in a townhouse with a teeny tiny backyard. And we were vegan at the time. So it's actually health food choices that kind of led us down this like rocky path to where we are now. We were vegan for health reasons, not for, ethical reasons necessarily. But I had friends who had chickens, and I just thought they were the cutest things ever. And I loved animals. And I thought, well, we could fit a couple chickens in our tiny little backyard. So chickens are the gateway animal for so many people I know. I don't know if that's true for you too, Lisa, but yeah, chickens are the way to go. So we got 2 little silky chickens, and we loved them, and we started eating their eggs. And around that time, Justin Rhodes had started his YouTube channel, and there were others out there. I started reading Joel Salatin's books, and we just gradually started to feel like the path that we had been on with our food choices was not the best for our health. We started to have some health problems associated with that. And so we just felt like, okay, getting real homegrown food, nutrient-rich animal foods into our diet was important. And we had our first little daughter at the time. And then shortly after that, I had my second daughter and was struggling with some postpartum depression after having her, and got into gardening through that as a way to kind of just get centered and focused. And it was really wonderful. So we added more and more chickens. We added rabbits, we added a garden, and pretty soon our little tiny backyard was pretty maxed out. We were I was trying to convince my husband we could fit a goat back there. And he was like, I think our neighbors are going to notice if, we have a goat back there all of a sudden. I did have a friend at the time who had dairy goats. And so I was familiar with that. I didn't really love them, but I loved the idea of having animals like that. And as I started just learning more about homesteading, I felt like having a dairy animal would be really awesome and really great for our health. Once you start down that real food, grass-fed, everything pastured sort of desire for your family's health and for their diet, it gets really, or you kind of have to do it yourself. And so that's kind of where we found ourselves, is wanting to be able to have these kinds of really wonderful food products in our lives, and not really being in a place to afford that, being a single income family. My husband was a teacher, it was pretty tight. And so we started looking for ways that we could achieve homesteading and move out of where we were at the time. And long story short, my family, my parents also ended up desiring to move around that time. And we found a mutually beneficial kind of agreement and ended up selling our little property and moving to a 2-acre homestead in the West Valley of Phoenix, Arizona. And when we first moved here, we did not do the smart thing. I think you should kind of start slow, but we were so excited. So we bought two full-size Jersey dairy cows before we even moved in. So we started right off the bat with Jersey dairy cows, and then
Wow.
along the way switched to goats.
Wow. That's exciting. And you know
Yeah.
what's funny is I think all of us as homesteaders, we can all relate to the fact that you jump in all fours
Yes.
when you move into your property. But let's tease this out just for a few minutes here. What made you switch from having the cows, the Jersey cows, to a smaller animal such as goats?
Yeah. So it was kind of a multifaceted reason, and it took some time. So we started with the two Jersey cows, and Jersey cows are just the sweetest looking things in the entire world. I loved them. I loved their sweet little faces, and
Hmm.
they were good cows. One of them wasn't, and we ended up selling her pretty soon after she freshened, because I realized pretty quickly we were in over our heads, and she was not trained to be milked, and it
Oh.
just wasn't a good fit. So we
Hmm.
sold her pretty quickly. The other cow was an old hand, and so she was great. But in the meantime, while we were waiting, because we bought two cows that were not even bred. So don't do that, folks. If you go to buy a dairy cow, don't get a unbred cow that has no and is not in milk. So there was a long waiting period before she was
Yeah.
going to even give birth. We
Yeah.
were very fortunate that they did take right away when we bred them, which isn't always the case. But in any case, I realized pretty quickly that we were going to still have to be buying milk and be feeding these large animals for a good 10 months or so. And so
Yep.
we got a little dairy goat in the meantime to keep us in milk. And I didn't know a whole lot about dairy goats at the time, but we really lucked out. She's still my favorite goat. She's the best. So she was a mini Nubian dairy
Uh-huh.
goat, and that's actually what I breed for now. We can talk maybe more about that later, why. But so we got her, and she was great, and we kind of eased into milking that way, which was wonderful. I highly recommend easing in with a smaller dairy animal, even if you plan to go cows down the road.
Hmm.
Um, but it ended up being really fortunate that we had a dairy goat in addition to our cows, even after our cows had their babies and we were milking them, because as it turned out, one of my daughters at the time, and then also now my son, who's since been born, they can't actually consume cow's milk without dietary issue, without eczema
Oh,
and other,
wow.
food sensitivity problems.
Hmm.
Even raw cow's milk, they just can't do it, even the A2 stuff. So
Wow.
goat milk, they could do great on, though. They really thrived on the milk, and we loved
Hmm.
it. Goat milk does not have to taste super goaty. If anyone out there is wondering, it can be absolutely wonderful.
Hmm.
Tastes just like cow's milk, super creamy and rich and delicious and sweet.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the biggest reason why we ended up switching. We did both for a few years, where I was
Hmm.
milking the goat and the cows. But just over the years, kind of started to feel like, this is ridiculous. Why am I spending so much time? I was making cheese and all of our dairy products with the cow's milk primarily. But two of my kids couldn't eat or drink those things. And so I was having to make two of everything, and it just got kind of absurd.
Hmm.
Um, Cows are also can be very expensive to keep when you're on a small property and you're feeding hay year round, which we were.
Hmm.
Um, and so we just started to feel like this isn't the best idea. So we were really grateful to our cow. She gave us an abundance of milk and babies, and I was so grateful for the learning experience. But we ended up back in 2021,
Hmm.
we ended up selling her. We traded her actually to a rancher for a full grown steer. And so it ended up working out really well. So we got some beef and we sold her. We just had
Hmm.
our little dairy goat at the time. And we added a few more and a couple more bucks. And I think now, I believe, last count, I have 16 at the moment, but 6 of them are pregnant. So we are
Lovely.
we are a bit overrun with goats around here.
Goats are like chips. You just can't have one.
It's
You
so
have to
true.
have more.
Very true.
Yeah. So this is actually really interesting because you don't get a chance to meet people who make that switch. And I really love the fact that you're talking about and explaining to us because of the dietary issue. I know even myself personally, sometimes cow's milk will affect eczema.
Hmm.
And it's just, a fact of life. But goat's milk, on the other hand, seems to be more friendly sometimes for those of us with eczema. So that's actually a really interesting dynamic there.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely. Goat's milk has a smaller fat globule.
mm-hmm,
There's other aspects about it too. It is always A2.
mm-hmm,
Cows, it's kind of hit or miss depending on the breed and the breeding practices of the farmers. But goat's milk is always A2. Plus, it has that smaller fat globule, and it just is a more similar chemical makeup to human breast milk, and so it's just a lot more easily digestible for humans.
exactly. Yeah, brilliant. So you went ahead and you made the switch. You traded out the cow, your Jersey cow, for steer, and you got the wonderful beef.
Yes,
And
we did.
we are all about that here on this homestead as well. And so kudos to that. And now you have 16 dairy goats. So what are your animal management practices when it comes to raising your goats? I mean, like when you first started off, because you didn't start off with 16, I know there's
Mhm.
babies involved. So,
Yeah.
how did you start off growing your herd? And you said that you also chose mini Nubians. Can you
Yes.
explain what your thought process was behind mini Nubians and then how you grew your herd?
Absolutely. So initially, I knew someone else who had many Nubian goats. That's how I was familiarized with the breed. But the more I learned about them, the more I realized that was what I really wanted to go for. Since we were switching to goats, I kind of had an opportunity to think it through. What do we want on our homestead? Um, and our first goat was a mini Nubian. Mini Nubians are a cross between a Nubian, which is a larger breed of dairy goat with the big floppy ears, and then a Nigerian dwarf, which is probably the more popular breed in the homestead world these days, a small dairy goat. And so what you get with a mini Nubian, you get the hybrid strength, which, if anyone is familiar with livestock or even plants, hybrids, they just have a hardiness that's really awesome. So
They
you get that
do.
hybrid strength with them. You also get a goat that's going to produce a lot more milk than a Nigerian dwarf typically does. So much depends on the individual animal and the goals of the breeders. But typically, my mini Nubians give around a gallon a day of milk. And they're in a smaller package, though, which is nice. They don't require nearly as much feed as a standard Nubian. They're really
Mhm.
easy to handle. I like the bucks are still a small size, so I can handle them totally on my own, no problem. Um, so I like that about the mini Nubians. They're also a lot less prone to mastitis because they don't give quite the volume. A standard Nubian can give 2 gallons a day easy, typically. And that's a lot of milk for
That's a
a
lot of
smaller
milk.
animal. They're a lot smaller than a cow. And so I just liked all of those factors with the mini Nubians. They're also an up and coming breed, which can be nice to get on the head of things like that if you're trying to
Mhm.
sell the offspring. I do register my goats, and that helps with being able to track their lineage and genetics, as well as being able to sell them at a higher price point. And so there are registries that will register mini Nubians. So we really like them a lot. Um,
Nice.
the way that we grew our herd, so we started with just the one mini Nubian. You should not just have one goat. They're a herd
No.
animal. They need a buddy. So pretty
Yeah.
soon after that, we ended up going back and getting her a little friend. And so we kept two goats. We were milking both of them. The one had a lot more Nigerian dwarf in her, and we just realized that that wasn't really the way we wanted to go. So eventually we did sell her. But when we sold our cow, that's when we realized we wanted to grow our herd a bit. And I happen to have a friend who's also a wonderful mentor to me. Her name is Victoria. She lives not too far away from me, and she had our Nubian dairy goats, standard Nubians, and she made cheese with their milk. But she was getting up in years and decided she was ready to kind of put a halt to all of the goat dairying on her property and was looking for a great home for them. So we have a bit of an arrangement. I give her milk every week, and she gave me her two standard Nubian dairy goats. I bought a mini Nubian buck, and so now I have a couple of them. But when you breed a Nubian dairy goat to a mini Nubian, the offspring is mini Nubian. So they have the great breed character that we're looking for, not to get too technical, but you want them to look like a Nubian goat, just smaller. So you get that kind of right off the bat when you have standard Nubians as the mothers. So one of those goats is retired now. One of them is heading that direction, but I have some of their offspring. So we ended up having basically 3 does and 2 bucks. And then from there, we've just grown out our herd, keeping a few of the babies every year.
Awesome. You know, you had mentioned your friend Victoria, and I just recently saw a post from you. I think it was the same person.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you had said, well, and you just said literally, but in the post, I think you had said she was a mentor to you and a friend. And when I saw that post, I thought that was just the most precious thing in the world. And as a side note, to you, the listener, go on over into Instagram if you haven't already and follow Sarah. Go ahead and follow her. We'll put the links in the show notes so that you can go ahead and follow her on Instagram. But what I had observed in that post is that she's a little bit older than you. And I just thought that was the most precious thing in the world. You know, our friends, we can always have friends who are the same age as us. That's easy. But to have somebody who's older than you as a friend is beautiful and a blessing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so was your friend Victoria, was she the person who actually mentored you with the dairy goats? Or how is it that you started learning about how to care for your dairy goats?
Sure. So it is such a blessing to have a friend who's also further ahead in life and in homesteading or whatever your passions are. And Victoria certainly is that to me. She's been a huge help in growing my herd and especially in understanding a lot of the conformation and other things that you look for when you're breeding animals. She knew a lot about that. She knows lots about making cheese. She's been making it for a long time. So she's the one who originally taught me to make cheese.
Nice.
I also learned so much just from books, from YouTube, from the internet, from all kinds of things. I find it helpful to specifically look for others who have the same breed of goat as you, because there are sort of certain standard things that apply to all goats, but then there's a lot just within the niche of the breed that is helpful to know. So Green Gables, I think it's just greengables.com. That's one of the first herds out there that really started diving into breeding mini Nubians. And so there's a lot of helpful articles and information on there if anyone's interested in this breed of goat. Other than that, lots of books. I love holistic goat care, I want to say it's called, by Gianniclis Caldwell. That's my Bible when it comes to dairy goats. There's stories, guides, and yeah, that's a wonderful
one.
I
do. It's a good book. Yeah.
It's great. It's very thorough. So those were my go-to resources. And then a lot of just trial and error. When you have enough animals or you do it for enough years, you run into problems. You just do. And I've had to call the vet out many a time, but I actually am always really grateful for those situations because I always walk away having learned something. And I really try to make the most of that time when I do have to call a vet out, and I'll ask them about a million questions. And we're very hands-on. We try to do a lot of stuff ourselves. So just lots of on the job learning, I guess.
That's awesome. And I think it's true for most of, most things homesteading. Sometimes you just have to just dive in and see if you're
Absolutely.
going to swim.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's awesome. Now, so we've established that you already have your herd, and now, it's wonderful to have all of these goats, and I'm sure our listeners are thinking this is awesome. Tell us, what all do you do with this milk, besides drink it? What are the things that you do with the milk that's produced on your homestead?
Sure. So we do sell some of our milk.
Mhm.
And I know laws vary from place to place. Here,
Right.
I'm able to sell for pet consumption, and people can do whatever they want with the milk when they get home.
Hmm.
So we do quite a bit of that actually, which is helpful. And I love being able to help others. I've had so many moms come to me and say, my baby's eczema is gone now because we're giving them goat milk instead of cow milk. So I'm glad to be able to provide that niche, especially since there's no other way to get raw goat milk in Arizona. There are no raw goat milk dairies out here that I know of anyway. Um, it's more of a niche sort of sub.
Yeah.
What am I looking for? What's the word I'm trying to say? It's
No,
more of a niche sort of thing to be able to sell.
yeah, it
But
is.
in
Yeah.
addition to that, it's really important to me that if we have dairy animals, I want to be able to provide all or most of my family's dairy needs with that. So I do make lots of cheese, and I teach people how to make cheese as well in an online course and on YouTube. In addition to that, we make a lot of yogurt. We have not ventured into making butter with the goat milk yet. You need a cream separator and a lot of milk to do it. So far, I think that would be more of a novelty thing. I'm happy to buy in butter from some reputable companies. But yeah, lots of butter, lots of yogurt and cheese and cream cheese and chev, the soft goat cheese that
Hmm.
everyone thinks of when they think of goats.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then drinking lots of it too.
Nice. And how long has it taken you to learn how to do this, I should say?
Well, um, I'm kind of a go-getter when it comes to this sort of thing. So I had an interest in making lots of things from scratch. For as long as I've been married, really, I've been trying to learn how to cook really well. When I had a friend who had goats, she would give me milk from time to time, and I would make just simple farmer's cheese where you just add lemon juice and salt and end up with kind of a
Hmm.
curd, and that's tasty and
Hmm.
fun. Um, and then when we had cows, again, that was really important to me to learn to make our family's dairy products. That's actually how I met Victoria. I was looking for anyone to really make cheese for me. I felt like I didn't have the time. I wanted to learn. I was making butter and other things with our cow's milk, but I
Yeah.
felt like if I could just find someone to do that part for me and I would pay them or pay them in milk or something. And she thought that I could probably learn how to do it. So that's how I learned to make cheese initially. It was Victoria kind of took me under her wing and taught me to make cheese with our cow milk. And then I really dove into that and
Uh-huh.
found every free recipe and every cheese book I could and really taught myself how to make cheese with the cow's milk. And then when we switched to goats, there's a lot of nuances with goat milk that make it a little trickier to make cheese with. You absolutely can. You can make pretty much any kind of cheese with any kind of mammal milk. So it's very doable, but there was a lot of trial and error in figuring out the very best ways to change recipes up to make them really suitable for goat milk.
Hmm.
So I've just lots of practice. Like you said, you just got to dive in sometimes and not be afraid of failure.
Hmm.
Um, I've had very few cheeses be so bad that we couldn't eat them. You might end up with something a little different than you were going for.
Yeah, this
But
is
if you're
true.
willing to learn and play around with ingredients in the kitchen, then it's doable for absolutely everybody.
Exactly. Now, here's another question for you. Some people have an aversion to goat's milk, anything,
Mm-hmm.
because the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth, and I'm pretty sure you're going to guess this question, oh, the milk, it tastes so, well,
Sour,
goaty.
goaty. Yes. Yes.
So what is your response when you hear somebody say that? And I'm sorry I'm putting you on the spot here with
No,
that,
not at
but
all.
what is your response when you hear people say, "Oh, it tastes too goaty"?
Yes. Well, usually I tell people my goat milk doesn't taste goaty. And you have to kind of explain because most people, when they're talking about milk that tastes goaty, they've had it from a grocery store. So it's a
Mhm.
pasteurized product. And pasteurized milk in general just doesn't taste as good as raw milk. Sometimes there's an adjustment to a flavor, right? But it's cooked milk. I mean, it's not the greatest taste in the world. Goat milk in particular, because it is a different molecular makeup than cow milk, it is more digestible for us. That also makes it just a more fragile milk. And so it is more susceptible to changes in flavor through excessive heat or through not handling it very well. So um, if you don't pasteurize it and you handle it well, meaning you're rapid chilling the milk, which is what everyone should be doing to achieve
Right.
the best quality product, the safest, raw milk. You should be rapid chilling it, that your goats are getting a balanced mineral in their diet and that they're eating some alfalfa hay that helps with adding sweetness. Um, just that they're healthy animals, right? There's no mastitis going on,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're using glass and stainless steel sorts of containers when you're dealing with the goat milk, and just keeping everything super clean, not sterile. I always tell my cheese making students, we're not going for sterile because that means lifeless, right? But we are going
Mm-hmm.
for sanitary. You want things to be nice and clean. So use your dishwasher or use your sanitizing spray, whatever you got. Do what you got to do to make sure things stay nice and super clean. But nothing beyond what common sense would tell you to do. So if you do those things and you have a healthy animal, you're going to end up with a really delicious milk. Now, some breeds of goats do produce a really goaty milk, especially the kinds that are, mountain breeds from Switzerland or France. Those are
Mm-hmm.
meant to have that really strong, quote unquote, goaty flavor. For the types of cheeses that they're making, they desire that flavor. So there are
Right.
some goats that have um, unique flavorings in their milk. But typically, the dairy goats you're going to find in the United States and Canada, they're going to be goats that produce a milk that tastes really sweet and almost indistinguishable from cow milk. We really prefer it to cow milk, honestly.
Yeah. We have dairy goats ourselves, and what one thing I've noticed is when the milk, if you don't get to it within like a few days, if you don't do anything with it and
Mm-hmm.
it just sits there, it does tend to change. The flavor does tend to change, just like you said, because it is a
Okay.
more fragile milk. That's
It
what
is.
our observation has been. But then
Mhm.
again, you know, it just depends on the breed as
Right.
well. Yeah,
So
because
much
we have
depends on
different
the
breeds.
breed and handling. I know if I rapid chill my milk and I keep things super clean, my milk will taste sweet for up to 2 weeks. So I don't get a goaty
Wow.
flavor the longer it, I mean, it will get less sweet. So that may be what you're just talking about
Yeah.
is a flavor.
Mm-hmm.
There is a flavor change, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't ever taste goaty. I will say that.
Mm-mm.
My milk doesn't usually taste goaty ever.
No, I've
If it
never
does, then you
noticed
can
it.
start addressing like, okay, what do we need to do here?
Right.
Maybe we need to up minerals or check a goat and make sure that they don't have mastitis or something going on.
Right. And mastitis is just ugly.
No fun.
Not fun at all. So, the goat flavor, the just the whole goaty flavor of milk is just always off-putting to people, but
Yes.
really super encourage people to go try to find somebody local who's producing that type of milk, who's producing goat milk, in your local area and try to drink that milk
Mhm.
fresh. Have there been any other, going back to the health benefits, have there been any other health benefits that you've seen in your family without divulging your family's personal business? But
Sure.
have there been any other health benefits that you've seen, especially transforming from being a vegan to not a vegan and drinking and eating food that you've produced on your homestead? What are the benefits, the health benefits that you've seen personally?
So we've definitely seen lots of progress in gut health for our whole family, just getting quality animal products into our diets. And just generally even hormones for myself, right? Like those are just so much more regulated when you have animal-based products in your diet. We've also had the eczema issues disappear, like I had mentioned previously. My husband absolutely loves having the raw goat milk. He's a huge, he just absolutely loves it. He's into lifting weights these days, and drinking milk is a very big part of his morning routine. So he's actually really sad that they're dry right now. They should be kidding here in just a couple of weeks. So we'll be back in milk
wow.
soon. Yes.
Wow.
But yeah, mostly I'd say really great for gut health, dental health too. Milk is so great. And if anyone is curious about that, you can look into the works of Dr. Weston A. Price. But raw milk is just absolutely wonderful for your dental health as well as your gut health, just your health in general.
Yep. We are all about that foundation here. Yes. Yeah, they are awesome. Well, Sarah, we're wrapping up this interview today. And if there is anything, if you had to do a sales pitch, if you had to just pitch it to somebody and say, they're on the fence, they're thinking, I should probably get goats. Maybe I should do it, but I'm just a little bit scared. It's a little scary. I don't know that I can do it. What would you say to that listener?
I'd say go for it for one thing. I think if you have the room, right, if you have the space, which you don't need a lot of space for goats. So if you have a property where you can have them and you have the support of your family, right, don't go behind anyone's back.
Doesn't end well.
Go for it. And certainly there's so many resources out there in this day and age, so much that you can learn. And I think so often we can get analysis paralysis, and you grow afraid to try something and you feel the need to learn absolutely everything. And I do think, don't just dive into something without knowing what you need to know about it, right? This is a living creature, and we want to make sure that we give them our best as we care for them. But so much is learning on the go. So if you know the basic needs of a goat, what they need to eat, what kind of shelter that they need, what kind of minerals and such, and what kind of medical supplies you need to keep on hand and things you need to know, you're going to be great to go. I highly recommend getting to know someone in your area who may have dairy goats. That's a really great place to start. If you can find someone who's willing to have you out and kind of show you what they do, because so much does depend on your climate and how you would take care of these animals. What I need here in Arizona is going to be different than what someone needs in the Midwest to properly care for their goats. So finding someone local to you, getting some of these books I had mentioned, and getting on YouTube. There's lots of great stuff out there. I certainly share a lot on my Instagram about the care and management of our goats. But there's so many great resources out there these days.
Awesome. And Sarah, just so that it's said verbally, if anybody wants to follow you, let us know. What is your Instagram handle?
Sure thing. So I'm at the Nest in the West. And so it's the-nest.in.the.west.
Yes, it is. And then you also mentioned, is that the only other place that a person can find you? Or
so you can also find me. I have a blog, thenestinthewest.com. I also have a YouTube channel, also The Nest in the West. That's in its infancy, so we'll be putting more videos out there. I teach a goat milk cheese making course as well, and I have a little ebook all about that, as well as free goat milk cheese making recipes on my YouTube channel. But you can find all of that information on my website, thenestinthewest.com. And I'm going to be relaunching my course here really soon in the next few months. So I'm excited to share that with everyone.
Great. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being, like I said, a willing participant here on the 2 Acre Homestead to be interviewed. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead and contact Sarah. Go ahead and follow her. I know we do around here. So it's been great having you. And from all of us to all of you, wherever you are in the world, happy homesteading. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.